The year 2020 is gradually winding down, and it is a time for reflections. It was a year that put the judiciary to test in different ways. Many cases that tested the resolve of the judiciary as the last hope of the common man. The COVID-19 pandemic had an impact on the sector, and it also witnessed attacks on courts and prisons in the wake of the NSAS protest. The introduction of virtual court sittings, new court procedures, the approval of the appointment of 8 justices, amongst others. On the whole, how has the judiciary fared in the year 2020? Joining me is lawyer and public affairs analyst Tunji Abdulhamid, and we also have another lawyer and human rights advocate joining us from Akwa Ibom, Inibehe Efyong. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. Good morning.
Thank you for having me.
Good morning. All right, we'll begin with you.
Morning. Thank you.
All right, Inibehe, we'll begin with you. If you were to look at the events that has happened in 2020 for the judiciary, I wonder how you would evaluate how the judiciary fared through the turbulent times. Talk about the pandemic, talk about NSAS, talk about the various issues that happened. Which was the high point for you and which was most trying time for you?
Thank you once again for having me, and compliments of the season.
Same to you.
Year 2020 was indeed a very turbulent, interesting time and period for the Nigerian judiciary. It was a year when our courts were forced to be shut, when the Temple of Justice became inaccessible because of the COVID-19 pandemic. We witnessed closure of all courts in the country, from the Supreme Court to even the magistracy, because of the pandemic. And this came unexpected. This came at the time that the judiciary was not prepared, at the time that there were no contingency plans, at the time that the judiciary has to explore urgent ways to continue to have some form of presence. And that led, as you rightly said in your introduction, to the introduction of virtual court proceedings, whereby proceedings are to be held either via Zoom or Skype. For many lawyers, this innovation is very new. Many lawyers were not prepared for this. Even some judges also had challenges adapting to this. Indeed, many of the courts could not adapt to this. It was only very few courts that were able to adapt to the demands of the pandemic. Now, the judiciary, unfortunately, also faced some sort of public skepticism towards its role in the administration of justice. We saw, for example, how the NSAS agitation affected public perception about the Nigerian judiciary. For example, where the CBN went to court and obtained certain orders through an expert application to freeze the accounts of protesters. That order did not go well for the image of the judiciary. We have also seen cases where people were arrested across the country and they were being remanded in custody. Situations where our courthouses could no longer remand accused persons or defendants in custodial centers. They had to be sent in correctional centers. They had to be sent to the police station because correctional centers were no longer accepting inmates due to the pandemic. We have also witnessed over the years the elevation of some judges and justices to higher courts. We saw increments in the number of justices of the Supreme Court, which is a welcome development. The Supreme Court is supposed to have not less than 21 justices. But over the years, that number has not been reached. And this has adversely affected the performance of the Supreme Court. We have deadlock. In fact, there was a report by the Punch newspaper, an important and very diligent investigation that was tagged Supreme Court of Date cases, where cases have been pending in the court for 30 years. You cannot run a country whose judiciary does not live up to the expectation of the citizens. A country whose judiciary does not decide cases within decades. So people are in court, they have cases pending, and those cases are never determined. So indeed, it was a trying period, and of course, with the burning of the Lagos State High Court, which was quite tragic, which was quite unfortunate. And I am hoping that we have learned appropriate lessons.
All right, let's bring the conversation to the studio now. Tunji Abdul Hamid, would you say the year 2020 that the judiciary has learned appropriate lessons like Ini Behefyong has put it?
Yeah, hi, good morning everyone again, complimentary city.
Yes.
I am not sure I have any major achievements that have been made by the judiciary in the last in this current year.
Yeah.
There are no major events because of the COVID-19. You know, we were locked down since in February or so,
March.
and we couldn't come back until May. And when we even came back, it was the environment was not conducive enough for everybody to do his job, and then that handicapped the judiciary in doing major things, or especially when they were not even in the election period. There were no major eyebrow cases that would shake the country. What I see majorly in 2020 regarding judiciary is a low point.
Really?
Yes, the burn down of what's it called?
The
Judiciary High Court is a very, very, very setback to us, because the effect of that court that has been burned down is very, very huge. Because as it is now, some cases for life, you won't be able to get them back to track. Some cases that have taken years to be in court, or they have taken that judges and the litigants and the lawyers have done a lot of work. Maybe they are at the last stage or whatever, that whose file or whatever has got burnt may not be recovered again, and that will be a setback. You can't just say, lawyers, bring your file, bring your processes, and then we start from where we stop. It's not possible.
But isn't that why there was the clamor for judicial reforms and the introduction of technology, which was met with some level of stiff opposition from some persons?
That was the reason why I say I don't have any high achievement regarding it, because we have been talking about digitalize judiciary, digitalize this and that. We will not do anything. We will wait until we have crisis. When we now have crisis, we'll now be looking for a way forward in that regard. You see, if we had those IT or whatever in place, we will have a fallback into that, go back to that area, and then we open start where we stopped. But as it is today now, it's going to be difficult. There are some cases that for life we will not be able to see them again.
And that is why
there are some major cases.
And that is why he mentioned if lessons have been learned. Hopefully.
I'm not sure I've learned any lesson, because I'm not sure. It's not today. It's not today. We have been talking about this. I'm not aware that we have enough judges yet in the country. We have been talking about lack of judges, and while we are having major some cases in court that are pending. We have so many years we have cases that have not been decided, just because we have few judges where we don't have enough facility to operate. We still don't have functional electricity in our courts. Sometimes you go to court, they say there's no light and the court will not sit, or to be postponed to certain things. We have a situation whereby judges are sharing courts. We have a situation whereby, like in Lagos State, we are told we are about 20 million or so, or over 20 million. We have just 50 or over 50 judges and then cases, and we have so many cases in court. A situation whereby you go to court, you see on the cost list, you see a judge having about 100 cases.
And this is what delays the process of justice.
And the judges, they see right in long guns. We don't have all this in place. We don't have enough personnel. We don't have all this, and we're not working towards that. We are just hoping that things will change. Nothing will change if you don't plan. You have to do things for things to change. You don't just sit down and expect that things will just change on its own. We have to do our own and ensure that, and we'll leave the rest to the end of the.
All right, we'll come back to when you say you're hoping for things to change and what should be done. We'll come back to that. But let's get back to Ini Behefyong now. There was an incident that happened sometime in August, which had to do with the conference, the annual general conference, and there was an invitation to the Kaduna State governor, and that led to a splinter group, the New Nigeria Bar Association. I want you to touch on that, how perhaps that has affected the institution, where a splinter group from the body came up. And a lot of persons said that has put some crack, even though we did not get much information about the new splinter group. But then some said that's put a crack on the walls of the judiciary.
Thank you once again. The disinvitation of Governor Nasser El-Rufai from the 2020 annual conference of the Nigerian Bar Association was a commendable decision. It was a decision that had to be taken. But this could have been avoided. The controversies, the so-called splinter group, which only existed on paper, because as far as I am concerned, there is no splinter group within the NBA. The so-called new Nigerian Bar Association was just an attempt by politicians to polarize Nigerian lawyers along ethnic, religious, and partisan lines. But as we have seen, that action has thoroughly failed. Now, I do not understand why the Nigerian Bar Association NBA, of which I am a bona fide member, will continue to hold this annual ritual in the name of, conferences, whereby they do not allow lawyers to have the primacy of participation. What the NBA has done over the years, unfortunately, is that they have sold out the conscience of the Nigerian bar to politicians. Every year when this conference holds, they will invite politicians. Politicians will donate money to the NBA. Politicians will sponsor the conference and many aspects of the activities of the conference. That is at the heart of the controversy that trailed the disinvitation of El-Rufai. It's not supposed to be so. The annual conference ought to be a gathering of Nigerian lawyers where lawyers will sit and deliberate on the challenges facing the profession, on issues of welfare affecting young lawyers, on challenges in the administration of justice. But what we have seen is that the annual conference became an opportunity to offer a platform to politicians who have little or no credibility to paint themselves as being acceptable to the public. That has to change. And I do not understand why a governor who has been serially accused of violation of human rights, a governor whose courts of law have found that he has violated the rights of not only citizens, but including Nigerian lawyers, That same governor was invited to speak to lawyers. A governor who has disobeyed court orders had no reason speaking at the conference of the NBA. So that controversy could have been avoided. And I do hope that the leaders of the bar will avoid a repetition of that tragic mistake. But on the whole, I must commend the NBA at the same time for having the courage to disinvite Governor El-Rufai. And you see what has happened. Since that disinvitation took place, El-Rufai has filed a series of questionable cases across several courts in the country against lawyers who merely upheld the position of the NBA. That itself is a validation of the decision that the Nigerian Bar Association had taken to disinvite it.
All right, let's bring it to the studio now. I wonder if you'd like to react to this conversation that Inibi have just started. Get your own point of view with that decision, and hoping that in 2021 we'll see the association do better, like he has. Yeah,
I just want to completely align myself with his submission. He has said it the way it is. I think the issue of a new Nigeria Bar Association is just on paper. They are not anywhere, and it's a political strategy to what's it called? Put NBA polarize NBA. In other words, divide them and rule. That is what they want to use. It's political game because of interest of certain politicians. The invitation was declined. Was withdrawn because certain lawyers or such large number of lawyers objected to his invitation because El-Rufai was known as at that time he was said to be somebody who doesn't respect the rule of law, who see rule of law as nothing. So if you are inviting that kind of person to your organization, you want to uphold the rule of law, and you are inviting somebody who does not respect the rule of law, it doesn't speak well of the organization. And I think it's a good decision by disinviting him. I align myself with his submission, and I agree with him in totality.
But earlier you talked about if there has to be change, looking forward now, if there has to be change, what should be done? That is what we want to get at this point from you.
Yeah, what we should be doing now is to not only talk and then and not. You see, for example, the issue of I will not close my eyes to that area. The issue of financial independence of judiciary is still there. The constitution, even though the constitution says that judiciary they must be given the independent autonomy, financial autonomy, yet the governors are objecting to it. And in fact, I'm aware they are in court in that regard. And because of that pressure, the president, who has even made an order, which order me I don't even support, because you don't need an order to enforce the provision of the Constitution. The executive order is unnecessary. It's there in the Constitution. This is the way it is. You don't need any executive order.
Do you think that this financial autonomy is what is not being there, is what is fueling the level of corruption from what the data that was released, saying that the judiciary is the most corrupt institution in Nigeria with a bribe of 9.4 billion naira?
You see, that another angle that I laugh when I read that statement, especially coming from ICPC. Why did I laugh? ICPC is one of the anti-corruption agency in the country, and I was not expecting that ICPC would be giving us statistics. I was expecting that ICPC would give us names, or give the names of those affected, or those who are culprit to the relevant prosecuting agencies, so that they will be prosecuted or they will be sanctioned by in that regard. They were just being given the statistics over last 3 years. In other words, in the last 3 years, who have been sanctioned, who have been disciplined, who have been punished. If you continue to just talk on paper, and we are not taking any action, we won't get any result. So what we need to do is to go beyond the rhetoric and the statistics. We should do our job the way it should be done. We should be up to our responsibilities. In other words, the judiciary should be given their independence, because that lack of independence is making them to be timid.
Really?
Yes, because of that lack of independence, because you dictate who will pay the piper.
And they take the tune.
Because of a situation whereby you will be hearing a certain governor gave a social number of cards to judges as if they are helping them. You know, it is responsible for them to have their own money, do what they want to do, so that they will not be at the mercy of anybody. If they are not at the mercy of anybody, they will not be afraid to do what they want to do. But because they know that, look, they needed to go to these people to collect money to do what they want to do, sometimes they will use that to say, okay, if you don't do what we are looking for...
Because let me take the conversation to Inipe Effiong, because the question of the lips of men is, where lies the hope of the common man? If issues of corruption is being said, if the judiciary, rather, is being said to be the most corrupt institution in Nigeria.
It is unfortunate. It is a tragedy. When I read the report by the ICPC, what came to my mind was, like my learned friend has rightly said, ICPC is not supposed to be announcing that 9.4 billion naira was paid as bribe by lawyers to judges and magistrates in just 1 year. I find that mind-boggling. The question is, who are these corrupt lawyers? Right. Who are these corrupt judges? Who are these corrupt magistrates? Arrest them, detain them, prosecute them, name and shame them. Let them be seen to be enemies of the people. Because a corrupt judge and a corrupt lawyer is worse than an armed robber. Because a judge is someone that has the sacred responsibility to determine the life and death of people. A judge is somebody that is supposed to live above board. So when we live in a country where the judiciary, the organ of government that is supposed to dispense justice, is being accused of corruption in this manner, to this level, and you have an anti-corruption agency just crying in the public, it begs the question whether ICPC is really confident of the facts that they have put forward. Because if these facts are correct, let them initiate petitions against these lawyers to the disciplinary committee. Let these lawyers' name be struck off from the role of legal practitioners in Nigeria. Let these lawyers be petitioned before the National Judicial Council. Let them be dismissed from service, prosecute and throw them into jail, treat them as common criminals. That is the only way to sanitize the judiciary. But on the point of the independence of the judiciary in terms of financial autonomy, it is a valid point which my learned friend has rightly made. Just a few days ago, the governor of Rivers State was telling people not to intimidate judges. But the same governor was the one who keeps saying is donating vehicles to judges, is donating vehicles to heads of customary court of appeal. I find that debasing. This happens in Lagos. This happens in Akwa Ibom. In fact, in Akwa Ibom, it was reported that the land was shared to judges. These judges are entitled to these things. These things are supposed to be part of their benefit. I know, for example, in Akwa Ibom, I am privy to information that some retired judges have not had their allowances paid. So many of them have died without receiving their allowances. But politicians are living in opulence. sense. Why our judicial officers are suffering? Go to our courts. Go to our courts. You see, they don't have the infrastructure. Yes, even lawyers, even me as a lawyer, there are days I go to court, I cannot even find seats to sit on. And that is because the infrastructures are not there. Most of our judges are still writing with long hands. They don't have stereographers. They don't have equipment to facilitate their work. So you have a system that is still operating in analog to a very large extent. That is not how the judiciary ought to perform in the 21st century. So if the judiciary must be the last hope of the common man, judges, the judiciary must be independent of the executive. But what we have today is that our governors see the judiciary as an extension of the Justice Department, as an extension of the Ministry of Justice. That is not how it is supposed to be. I do not understand why governors will be donating vehicles to judges. And the most painful part is that even governors who are lawyers, like Governor Kerry, who is the senior advocate of Nigeria, he also indulges in this. This is totally wrong. But unfortunately, the National Judicial Council has not done anything about it. The Nigerian Bar Association has not taken a firm position on this. If we must restore the authority and independence of the judiciary as an arm of government, governors should not be dictating what the judiciary should get and should not get. They are supposed to be on first-line charge, as required by the Constitution. Their budgets are not supposed to be determined by the heads of other arms of government. They are only supposed to make input. So this has to stop. This has to stop. We cannot be discussing the independence of the judiciary when our judges and magistrates are still being intimidated by security agencies, when you have DSS invading the courts. Until today, nobody has been punished. You had the Senate ad hoc committee that investigated that invasion of the Federal High Court in Showore's case. Till today, the report has not been published. I do not think we are a serious country, because if we are a serious country, that desecration, heads should have rolled. We saw what the Vice President Osibanjo did as acting president when the same lawless SSS invaded the National Assembly. Daura was removed as the Director General of the SSS. But when Buhari returned, we saw the invasion of the court, the Federal High Court. Till today, no SSS official has been arrested, no SSS official has been prosecuted, and this invasion has continued across the country. In Akwa Ibom, for example, there was a case where policemen forcefully entered the court and arrested some people with handcuffs just after the magistrate had ruled. So you have a situation where agencies of the executive, security agencies, treat our judges and the judiciary with disdain, with disrepute, and nothing is being done about it. This must not continue in 2021.
Right. All right, let's quickly find out a word on this issue now. There was an increment of the number of justices. Do you see that improving the performance of the courts in 2021, especially with regards to the dispensation of justice?
Yeah, of course, we need more judges, and then we need to do more recruitment as regards that's what I will be able to achieve more results. You see, we don't have to. We're having issues because we don't do the right thing at the right time. We know that, look, this number of judges that we have are not enough. We are not doing anything to ensure that we get enough judges to do our cases. I am aware that the Court of Appeal has set up a task force to be able to settle the backlog of cases that we have. And I hope that would, because we have so many appeals. Some have filed appeals as far back as 2008, and it's still pending. 2009, 2010, of course, and they are still pending. Wow. So the only cases they gave a preference to are political cases. So why should we give what's it called political cases preference and neglect other cases? You see, that's one of the areas we should do. Appointment of judges also is another issue. We are now where we are today because some of those people who found themselves to become a judge, and they don't merit it. Because it's not being done on merit now. Right. It's about who you know. It's about a political influence. Elections. So until we start to do things by way of merit, give it to those who deserve to be there. Not just because he's a party member, not because he's related to a party a strong man, not because it's this and that. Until we are able to do that, we may not get a judiciary of our hope, and it may not be, the judiciary may not be the hope of the common man. Because until they have their independence, until they have their financial autonomy, until we have merit in determining who becomes a judge, we may not get to where we are going to.
All right, gentlemen, Tunji Abdulhamid, lawyer and public affairs analyst, as well as Inibehe Fiong, lawyer and human rights advocate. We must thank you for your time on the program.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Let's tell you now that the views and reactions of all our guests are theirs and have no connection with TVC News. That's all on TVC Breakfast this morning. Join us again for another edition tomorrow at 7 a.m. Do stay safe. Up next